So the Senate has passed the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure deal. Man, I was surprised by this. The vote was 69-30, which means not only did it pass in a bipartisan fashion, it was sort of overwhelming. So before I show the graphic and get to the numbers as to where the money's going, let me give you guys just some of the Republicans who voted for this. So we have Susan Collins of Maine, who's sort of known as one of the more moderate Republicans. We have Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, not known as one of the more moderate Republicans. Chuck Grassley of Iowa, definitely not known as one of the more moderate Republicans. Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, the Grim Reaper himself, who is the furthest thing from a moderate. I mean, he's basically as extreme as it gets and as corrupt as it gets, and he voted for this. Lisa Murkowski, known as a moderate. Rob Portman. Mitt Romney of Utah, the ultimate establishment Thurston Howell III lookalike. And Tom Tillis of North Carolina. Again, this is just some of the Republicans who voted for it. When you get 69 votes, you got a lot of them who actually ended up voting for it. So the ones who opposed it, listen to this. Their argument was so weak, and we're going to get to more on that later, but particularly in regards to Josh Hawley, who was, the populist hope of the right. My ass cheeks. We're going to talk about that. The argument that a lot of these people gave was, it's going to add about $250 billion to the deficit. I can't in good faith do that. These are the same people who in 2017, not even that long ago, cast a vote to add nearly $2 trillion to the debt and the deficit when it came to the Trump tax cuts for the rich, where 83% of the benefits went to the top 1%. They voted for that to add to the deficit. But when it comes to stuff that actually would rebuild the country, we can't do it because of the debt and the deficit. Like, they're not even trying. These people are not even trying. They'll add to the deficit all day long for a Wall Street bailout or for another endless war that kills innocent civilians. But when it's to rebuild the country, the deficit. So it's so weak. It's as weak as it gets. So now, hey, Chuck, you can go ahead and throw that graphic up on the screen now. Let me walk everybody through this. It says the Senate approves the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill in a historic vote. Details of the bill: lawmakers set aside the largest share of the money, $110 billion for roads and bridges. It also includes roughly $73 billion for the electric grid and power infrastructure, $66 billion for passenger and freight rail, $65 billion for broadband investments, that's internet for all, $55 billion for water systems and infrastructure, $50 billion for Western water storage, $39 billion for public transit, $25 billion for airports, $21 billion for environmental remediation projects, $17 billion for ports and waterways, $15 billion for electric vehicles, $11 billion for road safety. So, now comes the really interesting question. The question is, you read the details of the bill, you're like, this is actually a good bill. So you think, how the hell did it get through the Senate? Because the Senate, for those of you who don't know, if you're new to politics, that's where good legislation goes to die. The House will usually, if it's left-leaning, the House will usually pass something that is good for the American people. Like, for example, they passed legal marijuana not too long ago. Well, it's currently sitting in the Senate and they haven't moved it through. But oftentimes the House will do decent things. It'll go to the Senate and then, or sometimes they vote the other way as well. Sometimes the Senate does it first and then the House will do it second. But usually this is where good legislation goes to die. So how the hell did it get through? Well, I read a lot on this and I've been thinking a lot about it. And the best answer I can come up with, there's a few answers, but the best one I can come up with is this. Joe Biden is really from the old school style of politics. He is a backslapping dude. And he likes to, sit around with his fellow senators and laugh it up. And it's the country club crowd. And I really think that he got behind closed doors with probably every single one of these Republicans who ended up voting for this. And he said to them flat out, what do you want? You tell me what you want and I'll deliver on it. So now, again, I can't give, this is my speculation, so I want to let everybody know that up front. But in order to get some of these Republicans to vote for an infrastructure bill, never in a million years did I think Tom Tillis of North Carolina or Chuck Grassley would vote for an infrastructure bill. Never in a million years. So how do you get these far-right senators to do it? You probably call them in your office and say, what do you need for North Carolina? What do you want for North Carolina, Tom Tillis? Because I got you. Chuck Grassley, what do you want for Iowa? How many jobs do you want created? And in what industry do you want them created? Because I'm going to deliver for you. And then guess what? You get to brag the next time there's an election about how you delivered for the people of Iowa. And Tom Tillis, you delivered for the people of North Carolina. So that's my guess, is if you look at the specifics of the bill, a lot of the investment, a lot of the money, a lot of the job creation is going to go to a lot of these Republican states where the people of the states will benefit from it. Now, by the way, am I against that? Fuck no, I'm not against that. If that's what Joe Biden did, good. That's called good politics. Now, I'm a person who likes the carrot and stick approach. So you say I'll be your best friend or I'll be your worst enemy. I don't know if he did the worst enemy thing, but it turns out the best friend thing may have worked. Now, beyond that, so now we get to the sadder reason why perhaps this worked. They may be talking behind the scenes about how, hey, if we do an overwhelming show of force for this bipartisan bill and the numbers are through the roof, that's going to put immense pressure on the House progressives to drop the $3.5 trillion bill and to only pass the bipartisan bill. Now, remember, the Congressional Progressive Caucus and Nancy Pelosi are both saying, we're not even going to look at this bipartisan infrastructure bill. We're not even going to bring it up for a vote unless the Senate also passes the $3.5 trillion human infrastructure bill with stuff like free college and universal pre-K and expanded Medicare and things of that nature. So this might be the Senate betting on the weakness of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and Nancy Pelosi and thinking, hey, if we force their hand on this bipartisan bill and we raise holy hell against them, maybe they'll just pass that and then maybe we can avoid the $3.5 trillion bill. Like our best bet, they were probably told our best bet to avoid the $3.5 trillion bill is to really support this infrastructure bill. And so that might be another reason why they're doing it. But listen, whatever the answer is, if the backslapping style of politics from Joe Biden, the old school approach to politics, the sit down and let's work out a deal approach, if that ended up working, by all means, that's great. Now, what would I do? Listen, I've now seen the final version of this bipartisan infrastructure bill. It's really not bad. Originally, there were provisions in there that I hated. There was like a gas tax, which is a regressive tax on working people. There were a bunch of things. Privatization. There was asset recycling, which is privatization of a lot of the infrastructure. Hated that. So the previous versions of the bill, I definitely would have voted against. This version of the bill, everything I've read on it so far, unless I'm missing something, I would definitely vote for this. But I'm with the House progressives on this, and I would say, listen, it's both or it's nothing. And I would use that position either to try to get the $3.5 trillion bill or worst case scenario, you sit down, you use your hardline position to get a seat at the table, and then you negotiate for a bill that's $2 trillion or more that keeps in a lot of these wonderful provisions in the human infrastructure bill. If ultimately we ended up getting a bill that's like $2.5 trillion or $2.2 trillion, something to that effect, and it has the free college in it, it has the universal pre-K, it has the elder care, it has the expanded Medicaid and negotiating for better drug prices. If it has all that stuff in it, then yes, I would accept $2 trillion or more, but if it drops under $2 trillion, I don't want to fucking hear it. Now, Joe Manchin, by the way, is out there saying he voted to procedurally advance the $3.5 trillion human infrastructure bill, but he just released a statement saying, hey, everybody hold your horses. Just so you know, this is just the beginning of the reconciliation process, and I'm not for $3.5 trillion. You're not going to get me to be for $3.5 trillion, so we got to be fiscally responsible, and let's talk about this, basically. Okay, well, now the House progressives have to make that decision. They should either tank the whole thing to show everybody that they have spine and that they're willing to play hardball, and or say, fine, then let's sit down and work out a deal. And guess what? Now, since we have a seat at the table, the deal's going to be way more on our terms than your terms, Joe Manchin. So we'll have to wait and see. The $3.5 trillion bill isn't going to pass on its own. They're about to take an axe to it. They're about to take a hatchet to it. And I'll be here to give you guys the details as we move along to let you know which parts are good, which parts are bad, and ultimately whether or not it's a deal that I think I could get behind. But I'd be more than happy to vote for the bipartisan bill if we get a good human infrastructure bill that's at least $2 trillion. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.